You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
Matt Lazowitz, and welcome to this week's episode of Bat Chat with Matt and Will, a Batman ranking podcast, where each week my co-host Will Nevin and I dig into 3 Batman stories, discuss them, and rank them on the big board, thus creating a giant list of Batman stories from best to worst. Will, how's it going tonight?
No, it's going, Matt. Thankfully, I no longer have the contractual option to reorganize the show. That was a fun experiment, and I'm glad it's over. That was weird. That was very weird.
It left me a bit befuddled by the end.
Yes, but you know what? I wanted to do it, to try it, and it's been tried. It's been done. Let's talk a little bit about the bonus episode we just recorded. Sell the freeloaders out there. So we did, what did we do, Matt? We did stories about nightmares and dreams and stories of insanity.
Yes, we did some Batman-related animation about nightmares and an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, because you have embraced complete madness when it comes to the bonus episodes, and I don't think you're going to let me do a bonus episode again that doesn't have something that isn't weird and not Batman.
Yes, we haven't talked about this off air, but I did send you the latest bit of madness.
Yes. I don't know how that will work.
Well, I think it would be real simple. So I found on Amazon, I think it's Batman villain candy. It's just little sour candies in the shape of the bat symbol, but it's villain candy because it's sour. And I think it would literally take like 2 minutes. This is either kind of good or kind of bad. I'm just looking forward to the day that we could take 2 hours and watch a thing and then say, is this better or worse than villain candy? So I'm really excited. I'm really excited.
I'm going to have to order that candy, aren't I, before it goes away?
It's $6, I think.
Actually, it just went down in price. It's now $5.68.
Oh my goodness. There's going to be a run on the villain candy. So good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. I'm excited. Ready for next month and Batman 66 and Dragnet. Bat Chat Movie Chat. Talked a little bit on the bonus episode about my experience with the re-release of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Spoiler, I was weird and strange and not at all like I remember from when I was 5, aside from the part at the farm is still slow and boring. We both saw Honey Don't, and look, I'll be honest. I am not as versed in the Coens or the singular Coen as I probably should be. As usual, I just maybe watch a trailer. Oh, speaking of trailers, Sisu 2, brother. Oh, Sisu 2, brother. Road to Revenge.
Oh my.
This time, they didn't just take his gold. The Soviets killed his family.
Oh, that's not going to be good for,
No, not
for
good.
them.
Not good for them. Absolutely not. Love the trailer. I'm gonna love the movie. Love Sisu. It's brilliant. So anyway, yes, not as familiar with the Coens as I should be, or the one Coen. Didn't do much researching beyond the trailer. Did not get at all how horny this movie is.
Oh, yes.
This is the horniest movie I've seen in a long time. I didn't know they made movies this horny anymore.
Oh, and this one, I don't know if it's less horny than the last one that Ethan and Trisha, his partner, made, Drive Away Dolls, but it's a near thing. That one was equally horny.
Like when there's the bar scene, right? I was like, are they really doing what I think they're doing? Yes, they are doing what I think they're doing. That's very horny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Coen Brothers movies aren't always that horny, but this project that they worked on over the pandemic where they made these lesbian neo-noirs are ridiculously horny.
I love how they brought in Charlie Day to basically just be Charlie.
Yeah.
Top Charlie.
Yeah, he really, that's what he does.
That's exactly what I wanted from him, and that's exactly what I got.
Laura and I have decided that there needs to be a cultural revolution to use the phrase, he made a penis move. Just that line. He made some kind of penis move that offended his machismo. But he made a penis move,
Yeah.
is a line. I thought I really enjoyed it. I like when everything ties together, but not in the way you expect.
Oh, yeah, not at all. Honey basically spent 95% of the movie with no clue what was happening.
Which is often how, I won't say often, but is the way some noirs work. It's a detective just constantly falling over things until they get the right answer. And often it's interesting when you get a story where the entire main thrust is a MacGuffin. That none of the things that Honey is investigating throughout much of the movie really matter for the central mystery. The central mystery does not have anything really to do with the church or all of that. It does in a way, because it's what the first victim's relationship to the church is what put them on the radar of the killer. But it's not, oh yeah, it's the church and the drugs and all of that. That's what this is about. No, that really had nothing to do with the main thing that Honey is looking for throughout the movie.
Red herring.
Yeah, and I liked that a lot. It's funny because I saw two noirs in the theaters over the course of the past week. And the other one, a movie called Hollywood Grit, here's a tip. If your biggest name in your movie is Patrick Duffy,
Dude.
you're working at a certain level of B moviness there.
Oh, before you go on, I want to quickly interrupt. I feel so bad for Michael Chiklis. It's so unfortunate.
What happened? Did I miss
Oh,
something?
he's doing some inspirational Jesus movie.
Oh no.
Like the idea is like, oh, based on a true life story about the oldest guy who ever went to play football.
Oh yeah, I saw that trailer once, and I think I completely like. Well, I'm not going to see this, and I just completely.
That man
over-
had a career once.
Oh yeah, the Shield, the Commish. He was the Thing.
What happened, Michael Chiklis?
Anything I could say as a joke would be offensive to Michael Chiklis, to who I'm sure is a very nice man.
Fire your agent.
But yet, Honey Don't was by far the better of the two neo noirs. Because again, Patrick Duffy, but the other one was like, let's try to cram every noir trope and thing into this one movie. And it was too much. It was twist on twist on twist on twist, which gets exhausting after a while.
Ugh.
And it was clearly set now because there's smartphones and the cars and things are obviously modern, but every now and then there's a character that's dressed like they're right out of the 1950s.
Strange.
And when it was okay, there's a jazz club and it's themed around that look. It's like, oh, okay, I can see that. But then the lady reporter shows up with the hat, like a wide brimmed hat, like right out of the 1950s. I guess the chanteuses and all that in the club and the cowboy guy, okay, I get that. They're going for a theme. But why is the reporter in that hat? It was a strange choice. Gorgeous looking costumes, but it was an odd choice.
Yes.
Monday, I saw Batman and Batman Returns on the Dolby large format screen.
Stayed up past your bedtime though.
Oh, did I ever. But it was worth it. It was beautiful. They looked gorgeous. And just little things that I didn't pick up. And don't ask me what any of them specifically were now. I just remember just watching it, like seeing like bits in the background, like little acting moments, faces and things. Like, wow, seeing these on this screen after seeing each of these movies, I'm got to be in the triple digits on Batman. I watched that VHS until it fell apart as a kid.
I believe it. Guy who started Batman podcast, I believe it.
But yeah, it was so cool to see them back to back on the big screen in one day. They're showing them again next Monday, and I was like, maybe I'll do Batman today and do Batman Returns at a more reasonable hour a week later. No, I want to see them together. I want to see them on the same day. And I think I said it on the bonus episode where we talked about Batman Returns, but I will say it again as a preview for those who might want to hear more. Batman 89 is a Batman movie that was directed by Tim Burton. Batman Returns is a Tim Burton movie that happens to have Batman in it. All of your Burton hallmarks and themes are there in Returns. So I think for people who are not as invested in the Batman-ness of the movies, I see why a lot of those people think Returns is the superior film, because they're interested in the Burton, in the aesthetic of it.
Oh, and it has an aesthetic.
It absolutely does. It is a weird looking movie in a good way. It's just so Burton with the cats, the Shrek cat heads, and Cobblepot's gang of circus weirdos, and Cobblepot himself with the drooling and the flippers and all of that. And Michelle Pfeiffer is just full on cat thing. Really cool to see it on the big screen. Really, really cool.
Haven't gotten my ticket yet, but I think my plan is to do Jaws tomorrow. And look, we've said before, it's crazy sometimes the things I have seen and haven't seen. Have not seen from start to finish, all the way, Jaws.
I'm seeing Jaws on IMAX on Saturday. I'm seeing the new Aronofsky on Friday, Caught Stealing.
I was just about to mention that. You talked about what was it,
Grit.
Hollywood Grit being sort of period-y, but not. I have noticed in the trailers for Caught Stealing that it is like what, late 90s, mid 90s?
Late 80s, early 90s, I think. Big punk scene, which can be in London anywhere from the 70s to the 90s, but I think it's the late 80s, early 90s.
So that should be interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know what else I'm seeing because I've got Monday off, so I can go and see another movie. Speaking of movies, though.
Speaking of movies,
this week we're celebrating a slightly belated 20th anniversary of Batman Begins.
oh my God.
I know. Cannot believe that movie is 20 years old.
Oh my God.
We're reading the movie adaptation of Batman Begins and two stories that were collected in a trade with that movie adaptation. So we'll start with said movie adaptation. Batman Begins, the official movie adaptation. This is written by Scott Beatty, with pencils by Killian Plunkett, inks by Serge Lapointe, colors by Jose Villarrubia, letters by Jared K. Fletcher, and edited by Jay Gardner. The cover date is June of 2005. A new vision of Bruce Wayne's early days as Batman, as a young Batman must face the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul while finding his place in Gotham. So important to note, as I said, cover date is June of 2005. That makes the release date April of 2005. 2 months before the movie actually came out. We complain about spoilers, but back in the day, those movie adaptations came out months before the movies. I remember buying it and leaving it because I didn't want to read it until I saw the movie. I remember doing that with some of the Star Wars adaptations too. I definitely episode 2, I think episode 1 as well. They released those movie adaptations well before the movie.
What was the one they just did that came out years after the movie?
Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. I believe that it was originally due to come out a few months later, and then the pandemic hit. And so it got pulled when the industry was shut down, and Marvel decided just not to release it. And then years later, I guess they'd had enough time and they figured people are buying these adaptations of Ahsoka season 1 and The Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. So people will probably buy this movie adaptation. So let's release it.
I didn't know they did comic adaptations of the Marvel show or the Star Wars shows.
Yeah, they've done those 3. And a long time ago when they did the first, friend of the show, Austin Gorton, did a review pointing out that as with movie adaptations that we've read before, where they're working off of shooting scripts, so there can be sometimes different content. The TV ones are flat out like shot for shot, scene for scene. So they're really just there for completists.
That's what I was just thinking. By the way, Austin, don't know if you're going to listen to this. Dig in the State Fair food reviews. Amazing content.
Speaking of adaptations and shot for shot versus shooting scripts versus abridgments, I was not a huge fan of this Batman Begins adaptation.
No, because it seemed like any problem the movie had, it just exacerbated them. It takes 40 pages to get to Batman, almost 50, I think. The scenes it leaves out, I have no idea why you would leave some of those scenes out. The scene, for example, when Batman first appears to Rachel, not in there, which seems to be very critical in that relationship.
Rachel is barely in this. The underwritten love interest is nearly excised from this thing. All of her scenes are abridged, are cut down to next to nothing. She is there to forward the plot more than anything else.
We don't see Gordon shoot off the missiles in the Batmobile, which is just fun.
Most of the fun is not here.
Yes.
Alfred, he gets one liner and they cut, or maybe two, but they cut that great moment in the jet where
That was the very first sign of, oh, this is not going to be a great adaptation.
the good thing you left all your money to me. I'll let you drive the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
I was nervous from page one because the first page is an attempt to do a comic book version of the opening bit of the movie of the bats
Yep.
forming the symbol.
Yeah, I had the same thought.
And
Like,
it's,
oh, this is not going to work.
why are you doing that? That is a visual motion thing. You don't need that here. You could have used that page to squeeze more plot in. They cut the scene where Bruce buys the hotel.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
a Rachel scene that is cut because that, A, it's a great little Bruce Wayne bit, but it's also where he and Rachel talk. And Rachel has no point in so much of what they do. And it's such a busy adaptation in that you're trying to squeeze in a 2 hour and 10-minute movie into 56 pages. And every page is so packed. There's so many panels. Killian Plunkett, who's the artist on the adaptation, I mean, he's done a lot of comic work, but now does a lot of Hollywood. He does a lot of character design and art direction for Lucasfilm. He did Clone Wars and Rebels. And so I think there was a real feel here of storyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't allow some of the moments that I wish could have had big splashes to them to have scale.
Like when the train crashes, that is certainly a big action set piece. Here it's just one more panel.
The moment where you really first get to see Batman in action at the docks, and there's the guy with the gun. Where are you? Here. And Batman is, behind him, hanging upside down. They do it smart in that it's a page turn. So you get, where are you? Turn page here. But it's just one panel at the bottom and at the top. That here should have been a splash of Batman like looming behind this guy.
That whole scene was unfortunately truncated because if you hadn't already seen the movie, you might not know that Carmine Falcone was busted in that scene.
They drop that Flass, Gordon's partner, is there in dialogue, but he's shot from behind. They cut the scene of Batman roughing up Flass to get
Swear to
information.
me.
Right. One of the most famous scenes from the movie, but also you don't know how Batman knows that Scarecrow's in the Narrows because he gets that information from Flass in that scene.
This could have used probably another 15 pages.
This should have been two 40-page issues, not one 60-page issue.
Yeah.
There are multiple lines that in the movie are callbacks to things said earlier that here only exist as the second half of the line. Or the callback exists without what it's calling back to. Alfred's line as he's trying to save Bruce from the burning Wayne Manor about all those push ups. But you don't see Bruce fall to the ground and do the push ups at the beginning of the movie. It's a direct
Mm-hmm.
callback. And you don't see the scene or get the line where Earl, the guy running Wayne Enterprises, condescendingly tells Bruce about all the shares being sold to charitable trusts. It's all very complicated, which is the line Bruce uses at the end when it turns out he was behind all of those brokerage accounts and charitable trusts that bought most of Wayne Enterprises. It's all very complicated. But again, without the line it's calling back to, it's just a line that's there.
And a couple of the lines that are in the comic somehow got garbled. Bruce explaining that he's not going back to Princeton really stuck out to me. In the film, I think it's something that he makes some kind of joke of like, oh, they didn't feel the
Mm-hmm.
same way. And here the line is something like, I feel like I don't have direction. It's very
The,
strange.
and there's one line that completely changes the scene because the line is different. When he's confronting Falcone, I can't say Falcone, I just can't. When he's confronting Falcone in the movie, when Falcone has the gun on him and he's talking about Joe Chill, he told me about that night. He said, your father, he cried, he begged like a dog for his life. Here he says, you begged like a dog for your life. Bruce, not Thomas. And that is a very important change because so much of this is about Bruce looking back at what Thomas did and what he said. And the fact you don't get Thomas's last line to Bruce, that is such a major change to the traditional Batman origin that Thomas doesn't die immediately and gets to say something to Bruce as he kneels next to him and tells him not to be afraid. Removing that changes so much of what this movie is about because it's about moving beyond fear.
We'll see this later. And let me ask you this, and this is we've come up against this, before. What's more interesting, and maybe the two different answers here. What does Bruce deserve? Does he deserve and or is more interested in a Thomas who's an asshole or a Thomas who is compassionate and good? Or maybe a third option, Bruce just imagines him being compassionate and good.
We'll definitely come up because that is a big thing to discuss in the next story specifically. I personally like the idea of a Thomas Wayne who is a good and compassionate man who is something of an absent father because he is so caught up in being the great man that he is the doctor and the philanthropist and so is always so busy being those things that he wasn't there for Bruce as much as a father normally would be. So Bruce puts him on a pedestal because the memories of Thomas are few and far between. Thomas was always trying when he got the opportunity to spend time with Bruce to make a big show of it because he wasn't around that much. Because he always thought he would have time.
We always do.
Right. And that's the curse. You never know how little time you have or how much time you have. I feel like this adaptation very much leaned into we need to get the plot of this movie out and didn't think about getting the theme or the character out as
Hmm.
much. But hey, we still got two panels of Gotham water technicians talking.
Oh, hell yes, we did. Yeah, if we gave him another 20 pages, we'd probably get 5 pages more of that.
And it adds at the end, Bruce making a joke, what, you want to put fire poles down to the cave? Let's be serious.
Ugh.
That joke struck me either as Beatty trying to be too clever by half, or he was working from a shooting script. That
I
line was there and they cut it for the right reasons.
Yeah, that was the impression I got. I could see that being in some earlier draft and then someone having the good sense for Alfred to come in there, strengthen the foundation. So,
One thing that they did do here that, again, I wonder if it was removed from the scripts. When Bruce is fighting the Ra's al Ghul at the beginning, as the temple is burning down, that Ra's speaks in the third person as if he's talking about someone else.
a little
And
foreshadowing.
right. And so I actually think that might have been an intentional bit that they cut because it was a little too obvious that, oh, he's a double and Ducard, who has the Ra's al Ghul facial hair, is the real Ra's. That jumped out at me. It was like, wait a minute. He doesn't say, you would have been able to stand with Ra's al Ghul. Unless you're Doctor Doom, you don't talk in the third person like that. Also, they cut the street kid who Batman gives the gadget to at the beginning just to have him again show up at the end with Rachel like he does in the movie. But you didn't have the original scene where he meets Batman. So the kid having faith that Batman will save them doesn't pack the same punch.
We've only done one, well, did we do we did the Mask of the Phantasm adaptation, right?
And Return of the Joker. That was the episode. It was 89, Mask of the Phantasm, Return of the Joker.
What little I remember. This especially does not hold up well to 89 because that is what, just outside the top 50 now, I think.
Yes. Yes.
53. That's there because of the amazing art. Just absolutely stupendous. Jerry Ordway, just brilliant art.
I think also because Denny O'Neil captures the vibe of the movie and knows how to adapt a movie into a comic versus here where it's just trying to squeeze the movie into the comic. 89, that adaptation is paced better.
The art here is by no means bad, but it's not anything you can point to and say, "Oh, those likenesses are stunning. This is some kind of breathtaking accomplishment." This is all perfectly fine in most spots.
Yeah. Not all the likenesses are spot on, but they're all well within what you'd expect. It's like you can tell who all of these people are, even if they're not as photorealistic as the 89 adaptation is.
Might have had some trouble getting Morgan Freeman right.
Yeah. And Liam Neeson's weird Ra's al Ghul facial hair is a moving target. But I think that's all we have to say about this one.
Oh, that means it's time. But Batman Begins, the official movie adaptation on the big board.
We are at 612 stories on the big board.
God damn.
Number one is the post-crisis origin of Batman, Batman Year One.
Coming in at a sexy 69 is Batman Annual number 14, Eye of the Beholder.
At 200 is Justice League, The Last Ride, Chip Zdarsky's last Justice League story. At 400 is The Bat Ape, the Golden Age trifle with a Bat Ape.
Coming in real high, not nearly as close to the bottom as it once was, Batman number 467 to 469, Shadowbox at 4 and 20.
And all the way at the bottom at 612, it's Three Jokers.
What a fucking turd of a comic.
So the lowest of the three movie adaptations that we've done is Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, down at 295. That was hamstrung by the fact that they only had 30 pages to adapt a 90-minute movie, but wound up this high because they actually took a scene that wasn't animated and have it in the adaptation. That was something that you, when you were watching the movie, were like, it's weird that we never did that. And I was like, yeah, because they didn't animate it. And then we read the movie adaptation, like, see, that's the scene where Bruce goes to the ruins of Arkham. That you were like, why didn't Bruce go and look at Arkham to see if Joker was still buried? It's like, yeah, he did, and it's right here. They did some smart stuff in putting some stuff back, but they had to also cut so much. So I feel like this one is running into similar trouble, but I also think that the art there is probably a little stronger. Also, because you're working in animated series style, so you don't have to worry about likeness. You just have to draw in the proper style. I think this is somewhere in the 300s, maybe the 400s.
I think it just stays out of the 400s.
Yeah, because I was looking at some of our sort of standard, where would this fall against some other stuff? And I don't think it tops, 383, 384, Mad Men Across the Water, Joker's Utility Belt. I think it's in the 390s somewhere. And literally maybe just right above the 400s. Like low 390, like or lower down towards the bottom in the 390s.
I think I would reread It Happened in Rome at 394 before I reread this.
I'd put it one further below. I'd put it in between Curse of the Innistree Quill and Gotham Underground, new 396.
Sounds good to me.
And this is the last Batman movie adaptation. DC stopped doing movie adaptations after this. They might have done one for Superman Returns, but I know, did like tie-in comics. And for Green Lantern, they didn't do an adaptation. They just did prequels and then nothing for Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises, which is a shame because I would have been curious to see what an adaptation of Dark Knight Rises or of Dark Knight looked like. Dark Knight Rises with the Blu-ray, there was a little mini comic that was the cold open adapted, but they didn't do a full movie adaptation. And you'd think the movie adaptation of Dark Knight would have been something that people would have wanted. But again, you'd have to have given it all that breathing room. And because that even more than this would need that. Our second story of the night is The Man Who Falls. This was originally published in The Secret Origins of the World's Greatest Superheroes trade paperback. The writer is Denny O'Neil, with art by Dick Giordano, colors by Tom McGraw, letters by John Costanza, and edited by Mark Waid. The cover date is March of 1990. Standing at the top of a building, preparing to leap into the night, Batman thinks back on the falls that have changed his life, and about the training and changes that have made him Batman.
Mark Waid on edits is not a thing you hear that often.
Not now. He started at DC as an editor.
Huh.
Yeah, he eventually got writing gigs, but he was an editor first. His first writing gig was a random Flash annual. And then shortly thereafter, he would take over Flash and write Flash for 100-ish issues. But yeah, it's something you don't think about Mark Waid as an editor, but that's how he started his career at DC. And this was the one original story in that Secret Origins of the World's Greatest Superheroes trade. The rest of them were things from Secret Origins, the comic, or from other miscellaneous books that did origin stories for the rest of the DC universe. But they commissioned a Batman story from Denny O'Neil for that trade.
Don't know if we've mentioned it tonight or not, but if we have, I will repeat. All of the stories tonight are in the Batman Begins movie trade.
Yes, they released that I actually think they released the single movie adaptation issue in April. I think they released the trade around the time the movie came out, a couple months later. Because it's the three stories we're covering tonight and a couple other random one-offs. But this story is very obviously one of the inspirations for the movie. This and Year One are what a lot of the movie draws from. This is the first story that has the Bruce Wayne fell into the well as a kid aspect and has become such a central part of the mythos. But this is an odd little story because there's aspects of this that we don't really see keeping as part of the greater Bat mythos. You got to think
Bruce Wayne as FBI training dropout.
Yep. 1990. So we're only 3 years after Year One. So the clay hasn't finished baking on what is the modern Batman origin. There's still a lot of stuff that is being decided on and being settled on at this point. And we get some very odd choices. The fact that Alfred appears in one panel late, that Denny O'Neil is writing this story and there's no Leslie Tompkins. Those are some strange things that you'd think would have featured more heavily in this story. Bruce leaving Gotham and going to college at 14 is something that is not picked up. He usually, now we establish, he leaves Gotham at 16 to 18, somewhere in that range. He's not quite this young when he leaves. But I think that a lot of that had to do with, okay, we got to establish his training and we've got to logically get him trained. So it's going to take more than 3 years before he comes back to Gotham. But it lays out very specific eras of Batman's training that we really get 4 or 5. We get Bruce at college, Bruce with the FBI, Bruce training with Kirigi, Bruce training with Ducard, and then the opening of Shaman. So it's really 5 distinct periods. But we don't get Harvey Harris. We don't get Ted Grant. We don't get John Zatara. There's a lot of the very established people who trained Batman who don't show up here, which could have to do with the fact that we only have 16 pages.
Shaman is an interesting bit to include here.
Well, it was Denny O'Neil's story, and it would have been very recent. It would have been the previous year. So I think Denny might have thought that, Shaman in Year One, those are going to be the 2 foundational new origin of Batman stories. And the fact that Shaman doesn't necessarily line up with the timeline of Year One doesn't help, with Year One being as central as it is. But the fact that we spent 2 of these 16 pages on Shaman, that's a big swing, Denny. That's a big swing.
Big Joker energy.
Ducard was also a fairly new character. He'd only been introduced 6-ish months before this story came out. That was a character that it seems like Denny latched onto after Blind Justice, where he first appeared. And there's a character who picked up. And I think it's funny that Born to Kill, the story we read a few weeks ago, that Damien story with the son of Ducard, that picks up aspects of the Ducard story here. Only we add in Ducard's son, that when Ducard was training Bruce, he shot one of the guys they were hunting who he could have taken in, and that's what sets Bruce off. That's the whole origin bit in Born to Kill. It's just has more than a page to tell that story, so you're able to add more layers to it.
I like the vibes here.
Oh,
Mood was good.
it's a good story. It's a weird little artifact of its time.
Mm.
I don't think there's anything bad about it. There's some things I don't agree with, but I think it is trying to take Year One and backfill the stuff that Miller didn't care about. Because Frank Miller doesn't want to do a Bruce meditating with a martial arts master in the mountains of Korea story. Frank Miller doesn't care about that.
No.
Denny O'Neil, who's very much into Zen, he wants to spend time with that. I like the idea that Bruce trained with many martial arts masters, like mastering each form around the world versus one guy. I understand why you would do that because logically, if he's got to learn all of these styles, it makes more sense to have him kind of had a one-stop shop versus having to travel the whole world. Also, if you only have, again, this few pages. But I like the idea that it was this sweeping journey, and this makes Bruce's globe-trotting quest feel smaller. And I think that has to do again with real estate rather than Denny attempting to make it seem smaller.
Which one of all of these various and sundry people teaches him about guns?
Ducard, probably?
Because the FBI guy says something about his shooting.
Or he says he's not a good shot.
Yeah.
And I would assume that by that point, Bruce hadn't ever picked up a gun. I assume that it's Ducard, or if you're doing the longer arc of Bruce's training, he picks somebody who is the world's greatest marksman, and that guy shows him how to shoot, even though he never intends to use a gun, because he's Batman and he still has to know how to do it.
And if you know all about guns, you presumably know how to defend against guns.
Did you notice the accidental nod to
To Ephraim Zimbalist? Of course I
Mhm.
did.
Yep, I love that. We're 3 years before Batman the Animated Series, but Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who starred in a show called FBI in the golden age of television, the 50s, and I think FBI is either the 50s or the 60s. That's funny. If this were a few years later, that would have been an intentional nod to Batman the Animated Series. But here, it's just, by the way, oh, this is the guy who's going to voice Alfred later. Huh, that's fun.
A weird reference in the time, though.
Yes, that's true.
Who would have been a shooty guy on television? Magnum PI? Did he use a gun?
I think he did, but I don't think he's.
Obviously, MacGyver didn't, but that was probably too early for MacGyver.
I can't think of anyone who jumps out of my mind as the marksman. Oh, the FBI was 1965 to 1974. It's only a 16-year-old reference for the last season of the show. So yes, that is quite a dated reference. I also don't know if there was anything at the time that featured FBI agents. We're still a few years away from the X-Files, a few years away from Bones, which are both heavily FBI related shows. And there's at least a couple of FBI shows on now, but I lose track of all the procedurals at this point.
Ugh. CBS has got 15 of them.
And only 7 are NCIS. This is important for adding in the Bruce falling into the well thing. And this is, as you brought up, Thomas Wayne's an asshole here.
A real big asshole.
Calling his 5-year-old son an idiot for falling into the well and not paying attention, and Martha having to be the comforting figure. I don't want Thomas Wayne to be an asshole. I just don't like it. I like the idea that Thomas Wayne was a good guy.
But not the world's best father.
No.
Just like eventually Bruce turns out to be.
I think Bruce looks at Tom, absolutely looks through Thomas through rose-colored glasses. But I think it's mostly because I don't think Thomas was around. It's hokey, but it explains why Martha is dressed to the nines with the pearls to go to the movies. Because it's rare that the Waynes would go out, so they made a big deal of it, even if it was just going to the movies. I think that makes that make sense, because otherwise, like, why are you dressed up like that if you're just going to see Zorro? This is one of the more obscure stories on the big board, at least in its original form. This is not something you can stumble across. You have to get it in that trade or in the mini comic that came with the Blu-ray of Batman Begins. Because that original trade is not something that you just find lying around anymore, because it is long since out of print.
But it made an impression on somebody.
Oh, it absolutely did. that little bit of Bruce falling down the well is one of those things that made its way into the mythos. And neither the Batman Begins adaptation or this really spend much time on the pearls.
Nope.
That is another one of these things. I mean, again, we know that that came from Year One and Dark Knight. I believe that's featured in both of the Miller stories. The pearls are, again, second only to Joker in that Hawaiian shirt for the okay, we really need to just let these images from these seminal 80s Batman stories go. Outside of the Thomas Wayne sour note, I think this is a really solid little Batman origin story. I think you could give this as a basic primer if you met someone who knew nothing about Batman and you needed to give them a okay, here is mostly everything you need to understand about this character. This story does a good job of giving you all of that background. And it is Denny O'Neil, so it's well put together with the motifs of falling down the well, his parents falling, and him falling to his knees by them, and the line about that was another time I fell because the last time I fell because who rose up was the beginning of what I would become. And the end where he says, he takes a deep breath and he falls as he did as a child and as he will for the rest of his life as he makes the dive towards the criminals he's going to be nabbing. Denny O'Neil knows how to structure a story.
That he does. I like Batman stories that are basically about being Batman, not necessarily anything that is happening on the streets of Gotham. It's a good meta story.
And Dick Giordano does a really nice job with the art. The art is just strong throughout.
I believe it's time. The Secret Origins of the World's Greatest Superheroes, a man who falls on the big board. Top half.
Yeah.
Story of the night, I think.
So 200 right now is Justice League The Last Ride. I might put it, I'm trying to find a hard ceiling on this. I don't think it's going to wind up this high, but I want to give a definite hard ceiling in the same way of something comparable.
Okay.
124, my beginning and my probable end, is a stronger story of Bruce as a young man and some of that training stuff. Because I think it does more with having Leslie, having Alfred, and the frame there of him waiting to see if Jason Todd will pull through is a stronger framing narrative than Bruce just thinking about it while standing atop a gargoyle.
Well, if that's the floor, or excuse me,
Ceiling.
that's the ceiling.
Were you thinking higher than that?
No, 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 no. I was looking more at probably the lower 200, something like Untold Legend of the Batman at 208.
Oh, that's actually another really good comparison.
I similarly think that Untold Legend of the Batman is better.
Yes, agree. I was thinking about origin of Batman stories, and for me, the one that pops into my head is my beginning and my probable end. But yes, Untold Legend of the Batman is better.
All right, so maybe this can be a tight-ish little window. I think this is better than Superman Annual number 3, Armageddon 2001 at 224, in that this is certainly more essential than
Hmm.
that.
I might want to go right above that because I like going sane. I like all the stuff that DeMatteis is doing in going sane.
All right, new 224 then.
And our final story of the night is Airtime. This is Detective Comics Volume 1, number 757. The writer is Greg Rucka, with pencils by Rick Burchett, inks by Rodney Ramos, colors by Wildstorm FX, letters by Todd Klein, and edited by Bob Schreck and Michael Wright. The cover date is June of 2001. As Batman pursues members of the Lucky Hand Triad, a family is trapped in their car underwater, the car slowly filling. Will Batman discover their plight in time to rescue them?
So, riddle me this, Matt Lazowitz. What is your feeling, your thoughts on how this became included in this trade?
I think they were looking for other just little one off Batman stories because the next one is a Brubaker issue of Batman, and the final is a one off Legends of the Dark Knight story. And I think the editor just liked that Rucka Brubaker period and plucked one offs from that to put in here. Because I can't think of any particular reason why this is in here versus something that more featured a young Batman. I like this story a lot. It's Greg Rucka. I mean, he knows how to write Batman, but I can't think of anything that's. I looked at this and screamed, "Batman Begins."
Yeah.
I think you were able to do this story without there being anything in it that would make a reader scratch their head. So much of the stuff we've read from the 80s and the 90s were in that period where the Bat books were very interconnected. So there were pages that you would have had to sort of excise because it wouldn't have made sense to have a page with Jim Gordon running for mayor of Gotham. They were able to do this story and cut nothing. It's exactly as the issue was presented.
I thought it was solid. I probably overthought the plot a bit in terms of how long you can survive in a car underwater. But the basic idea of Batman being that dedicated, that determined, that is a good Batman, obviously.
We've talked about it before, but I like a Batman who's a little fallible so he can rise above. It's a Batman Begins episode. Why do we fall, Master Wayne? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Right. And so here, I don't think anyone is harder on Bruce than Bruce. And so his internal monologue here from the beginning that, it was a bad night from the start, that he's blaming himself. And we don't get it here, but the one thing that I'd be curious, I read this in that trade. I'd want to look at the original issue and see if there was actually a slight alteration to the dialogue. Not the dialogue, to the one of the narration boxes. It doesn't. Okay, because there's 2 hours wasted extricating myself from a ridiculous costume party and ditching, and it's just an ellipsis. That ditching is he's referring to Sasha Bordeaux because this is the period where Sasha is his bodyguard and doesn't know he doesn't realize she knows he's Batman. I believe this is the issue right after Lord of the Ring. So she just found out and hasn't told him that she knows that he's Batman yet. But that line is directly in reference to him having to avoid Sasha. It's not there. I was curious if it was in the original issue and they just ellipsed it because anyone picking up this trade who hasn't been reading Batman at that period, he'd say Sasha or Sasha Bordeaux and everyone would scratch their heads. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about in opening, we kind of said it in the column. You haven't started Peacemaker season 2, have you?
No, I have not.
Sasha Bordeaux, baby.
What?
She's Rick Flag's go-to right hand.
Interesting.
He has a female right hand person. Bordeaux, I need you to. I was like, wait, Bordeaux? And in the credits, she is Sasha Bordeaux.
Huh.
Okay, I know it's
James
probably
Gunn, you little scamp.
it's there. It definitely means we need to do that Sasha Bordeaux episode.
Yep.
This is the kind of story I have a soft spot for. I love the Batman winds up helping people and is the hero at the end. He gets a hero moment. Most Superman stories, most Wonder Woman stories, most Flash stories wind up with the heroes getting to have that moment where the people are there and they're grateful and, gosh, thanks for saving us, Superman.
Batman is just taking somebody back to Arkham.
Yeah, Batman doesn't get to have those moments as much.
He is the Sisyphus of the superhero world.
But here, just the moment he saves the family and has the moment that he shows that he has a heart, even though he doesn't say it, and that he saved Hamburger, the plush dragon, and hands it back to the little boy who was trapped. Bruce is kind of a big kid underneath all of the Sturm and Batarangs. And while the timeline there, yes, might have been a little stretched, I like what are we going to do? Okay, we need to get the spare tire and get the air out of the spare tire. We have to wait for the pressure to equalize because otherwise the car doors won't open. That was something I remember learning from a comic book, not from this one, from an older comic, but if you're underwater, you can't open the doors until the car is filled with water because then the water pressure is the same inside as outside.
Yeah, as Mythbusters taught me, you got to open a door as soon as you go in the drink, or you got to wait. But they are right about once you're in the water, you might not know which way is up, which is fun. This is why I don't go into water.
Mm-hmm. There's the scene when he's hunting the first of the triad guys. I guess the second, because the first one is the driver who's trapped in the car. But he's hunting the one guy in the woods. Real Night of the Stalker vibes. I think Rucka was probably intentionally homaging Night of the Stalker there. And Rick Burchett draws a nice Batman story. He's worked with Rucka a lot on this run and in other places. Huntress Cry for Blood, and did a lot of animated series style. But here, his style isn't. He's not doing animated series, but you could see why someone could look at his normal style and be like, I bet he could do animated series real well.
Yeah, this is closer to animated series than it is to house style.
But I think still good.
Interesting use of colors.
Well, that's this run on Detective. The whole Rucka run is done in this muted color palette. We've talked about this before, but we read these stories so infrequently that I
Yeah.
think every time you're like, interesting color palette. I'm like, yep, they do this every time.
Imagine if we had just started at Detective Comic 1, man, and every episode was, well, this is three more issues of Detective Comics.
Well, we would have started with 27 because Detective Comics 1 would have been some uncomfortable yellow peril pre-Batman Detective Comics
Look,
stories.
look, look, we can't do this starting at 27 nonsense. We'd start at the beginning.
We do the Slam Bradley story for Detective Comics number 1.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I love the splash page of Bruce with the rebreather
Oh
and
yeah,
the
that is
oxygen,
good.
him coming to the rescue.
The light behind him.
I love it. Bruce being clever that these guys shoot him and he drops and he's just laying there like about the car you sideswiped, and then they say, yeah, that's old news, and he just smiles like he just needed to know that he was right. And then it's like, no, he probably could have popped up sooner, but he just needed that little bit of information before he kicks these two guys asses real easy. Now, I don't know if you know the answer to this, and maybe someone out there does, but I don't, and it made me curious. Bruce was running late because of all the stuff with Sasha, and then he said that he missed the Lucky Hand Triad stealing 10 kilos of pharmaceutical grade cocaine.
The good stuff.
They shoot a guard and a cop, so this was not being transported by dealers. What would be a use, or where would one store pharmaceutical grade cocaine? I don't
I
know.
guess where you're doing your cocaine medical experiments?
I guess that was the only answer I could come up with, where you're trying to find counteragents for overdoses and things that you need some of the drug to actually test. Uncut. You could cut that with enough baby powder to turn 10 kilos into a small fortune.
Gotta cut it with the baby powder to make your margins.
I also really, the final few lines, cracked a couple of ribs, bruises are swelling like rotten fruit. I'm tired. All told, not a bad night.
Not a bad night.
As he sees the family that he saved. he puts himself in harm's way to protect others. A lot of good dialogue, a lot of that, again, the thoughts about what it means to be Batman, what he is doing. I've been feeling slow all night. People die when I'm slow. People like my parents. I don't want Batman to always be dwelling on the death of his parents because that's tedious. But I think whenever he thinks about the possibility of bystanders dying, it always comes down to the first people he couldn't save.
And especially families and kids.
Kids are always going to be a soft spot for Batman. He will always want to protect a child. And I liked the way Rucka set up the chase, that it's those windy roads. And even as Batman say, he keeps losing sight of them. So he wouldn't have seen when they knocked these people. I guess we didn't establish that, they sideswipe this car off of a winding mountain road and it slides down an embankment into what I assume is a lake or the bay. You can't be entirely sure. But we're just outside Gotham. I mean, the sign was like Gotham 5 miles. So they're probably,
Bloodhaven, 89 miles.
which is further than I thought that the two of them were apart. I thought they were closer to maybe not New York and Jersey City right across the river, but I always pictured 20-ish miles between New York and Newark. It's funny, I grew up right there, and Newark is closer to New York than I thought it was. 8.86 miles from New York to Newark, 11 by car. It just feels that way because you have to cross the damn bridge or the tunnel, and it takes forever. I have learned something new today.
I want to say this one thing, talking about bridges and tunnels in New Jersey. So I'm leaving that, for lack of a better word, resort where I was staying at in New Jersey. I get on some ass backward road and I go on the goddamnedest, narrowest bridge I have ever been on. A bridge that's so narrow that I could see that the cars coming toward me have folded their mirrors to the side.
You were on the canal bridge. I know that. I've driven over that bridge 1,000 times.
That was terrifying.
Oh, it is.
I would have gone 30 minutes out of my way to not be on that bridge.
That was right by where I used to work. I had to drive over that every day. It is scary, that little bridge.
It's so tiny. What the
Yeah.
fuck are you people doing up there?
This is why New Jersey, you learn to drive a very specific way in New Jersey. You learn not to take left turns, and you learn how to drive on narrow bridges.
Oh my God. And by the time I'm on the bridge, there's nothing I can do. I can't stop and fold my mirrors in. That just not gonna work.
Nope, you just gotta pray, man. You just gotta pray. But since we're talking about bridges in New Jersey, even though Gotham is in New Jersey, so there are probably some of those bridges in and around Gotham.
Oh, that means it's time to put Detective Comics number 757 airtime on the big board.
Okay, so right now 300 is Brotherhood of the Fist.
We can go above that.
I think so, and I also honestly think Brotherhood of the Fist we're going to have to possibly revisit. 250 is Batman in Bethlehem, the Morrison Damian as Batman story. I think we're closer there. Well, Hard Ceiling is 232 Blades. Not above
I was about to ask. We will always have our darlings. How about the new 240, right below the first Batman, right above Batman Dylan Dog?
Okay, a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Okay.
We have a very, very similar story 3 slots above that. Fool's Errand. That is the Batman is talking to Joker in Arkham because Joker has convinced a guy to kidnap a kid who's in a car trunk in a ship that is filling with water. And it's a Silence of the Lambs Batman Joker conversation juxtaposed with these splash pages of Batman fighting his way past a bunch of heavies that are there to keep Batman from getting to the little girl in the car.
think this is better than that.
I would say the new 235.
Okay.
Below Deadshot, above the first arc of Gotham Academy.
Sounds good to me.
And hey, speaking of Gotham Academy, that does it for tonight. Next week, Gotham Academy is returning with a new miniseries, so we're reading 3 stories of young people in Gotham. Remember, you can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/batchat with Matt and Will, where you can get shoutouts, bonus content, pick a story, and even come on the show. We'd like to thank those Patreon backers: Dan Grote, Josh Wheel, Mrs. Abigail Hartbaum,
Hmm.
Asma Fangirl, Tony Thornley,
Go Aggies.
Sam Hopper, John Wickham,
That asshole.
Robert Secundus,
Step away from the discourse.
Tim Rooney, Giorgio Reggioli, David Wheel,
World's greatest gray belt.
Alexander Wheel, Matt McThorne,
McThorny.
Dan Offer,
Barely know her.
Nate Randell, Daniel Mosley, Ross Holmes,
Mr. Random Ace.
Will Crisp,
Mi compadre.
Carlos Cordova, Jordan Jennings, and Charlie Etheridge Nunn for their support. This show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music/Audible, YouTube Music, Podbean, and on comicsxf.com, where new episodes drop every Thursday. You can find me on Blue Sky, where I talk about comics and other random things, and Letterboxd, where I review all the movies I watch, both at MattLaz1013.
You can continue to find me and my shambly corpse on Twitter at Will Nevin. Oh boy, what a day. Started back to school in earnest this week, and I am fucking beat. I am tired. I'm gonna go to bed. Good night, Huntsville.
And be sure to visit ComicsXF at comicsxf.com or ComicsXF on Blue Sky for our weekly Friday Batshot Roundup of new Bat books. For my other show, the ComicsXF Interview Podcast, where my longtime best friend Dan Grote and I interview comics creators, retailers, publishers, journalists, and other related tradespeople, as well as all the other stuff Will and I are writing. Stay safe out there, folks. Gotham is not a place to be after dark.